You're a fool, Mei. A complete and utter fool. Mei Lin stood frozen in the kitchen she'd designed herself, the sound of Gavin's words hanging in the air like shattered glass. Her husband's voice had that quiet, cutting edge it always got when he was truly angry. Not the explosive kind, but the cold, surgical sort that sliced deeper. 10 years we've been married, Gavin continued, pacing the Italian marble floor she'd secretly paid for. And you still can't figure out how to manage our finances properly? The credit card was declined, Mei, at the Henderson dinner. Do you have any idea how that made me look? She could picture it perfectly. Gavin, with his carefully curated image of success, fumbling with a platinum card while his colleagues watched. His humiliation now transmuted into rage aimed squarely at her. I'm sorry, she said automatically, the words hollow. She'd given up explaining years ago. There must have been a mistake with the bank. A mistake? He laughed, the sound brittle. The mistake was thinking you could handle our joint accounts. The mistake was believing you when you said you understood money. He ran his hands through his salt and pepper hair that had been fully dark when they'd met. You don't contribute anything financially, but the least you could do is not actively sabotage what I've built. Mei's phone buzzed in her pocket. She knew without looking that it was Jessica, her COO, about the Beijing deal they'd been securing for months. The deal worth $2.3 billion that would finalize at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Maybe it would be better if you stayed with your sister for a while, Gavin said, not looking at her. I need some space to fix this mess. You want me to leave? The question came out softer than she'd intended. I think it's for the best, just until I sort out whatever you've done to our accounts. He finally looked at her, his expression a mixture of disappointment and disdain. Maybe being on your own will finally teach you the value of money. Mei felt something shift inside her, a fault line that had been stressed for years finally fracturing. 10 years of separate bank accounts. 10 years of him believing she was a financially dependent housewife who occasionally consulted from home. 10 years of hiding the fact that she was the founder and CEO of Lintech Global, one of the most successful private tech firms in the country. 10 years of making herself small enough to fit inside the frame he'd built for her. Okay, she said, surprised by the steadiness of her voice. I'll go. Good. Gavin nodded, already turning away, the matter settled. You can come back when you've learned your lesson. Her phone buzzed again. This time she pulled it out. Beijing team confirming final terms. Need your sign-off on the structural changes. Are we still on for the 9 a.m. announcement? Mei looked up at her husband's back as he poured himself a scotch, then down at the message from her company. I'll be gone by morning, she said to a husband who was barely listening. What Gavin didn't know was that by 9:15 a.m. tomorrow, everything would change. Mei hadn't planned to hide her success. Not at first. When she met Gavin Reed at a charity gala 11 years ago, she'd been 32 and already successful, her tech startup gaining traction after years of brutal work. He was 40, handsome in that secure, established way, an architectural engineer who designed commercial buildings and spoke with casual confidence about his projects. And what do you do? He'd asked that night, eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled. I work in tech, she'd answered simply, accustomed to downplaying. Women founders were still rarities then, especially Asian women who looked younger than their age. So you code? His interest seemed genuine. Among other things, she'd said, charmed by his attention. I started a company that specializes in predictive analytics for supply chain management. He'd nodded politely, in the way people did when they didn't quite follow but were being courteous. Later that night, when he'd asked for her number, she felt that flutter, the one she rarely allowed herself to feel, because building a company consumed everything. Their courtship had been a whirlwind. Gavin was attentive, ambitious, and seemed to admire her intelligence. But gradually, she noticed the subtle shifts in his expression when her company came up, the slight glaze of disinterest, the quick changes of subject. Supply chains aren't exactly dinner conversation, he'd joke. Tell me more about you, not your work. 6 months in, at a dinner with his colleagues, she'd overheard him explain her job. Mei does some consulting in tech, but she's talking about scaling back to focus on family soon. She'd never said that. Not once. Later, alone in his apartment, she confronted him. Why did you say I was planning to scale back work? Gavin looked genuinely confused. Aren't you? I mean, your business is what, 10 people? 15? It's not like you're running Microsoft. At the time, Lintech had 48 employees and had just secured its Series B funding. I'm not planning to scale back, she'd said carefully. My company is actually growing. He'd pulled her close then, kissing her forehead in a way that felt both affectionate and dismissive. Of course it is. You're brilliant. I just meant eventually. When we're married, when we have kids, priorities shift. She should have corrected him firmly. Should have shown him the articles featuring her as a founder to watch, the revenue projections, the term sheets from investors. But something in his certainty, in his vision of their future, made her hesitate. When he proposed 3 months later, she said yes because she loved him. Because she thought the rest would sort itself out. Because she believed she could have both. The company she was building, and the life with this man she'd chosen. The separate bank accounts had been her idea. I have my consulting income, and you have your firm, she'd suggested. We can have our own accounts and a joint one for household expenses. Gavin had agreed easily. Makes sense. I know architects who went through nasty divorces where everything got tangled up. I wasn't thinking about divorce, she'd said quickly. Of course not, sweetheart. He'd smiled. But it's cleaner this way. I'll handle the major expenses since, well, he'd gestured vaguely. The implication clear, since he made more. He had no idea that her net worth was already triple his. After the wedding, it became easier to maintain the fiction. She worked from home often, in a study Gavin rarely entered. Her business trips were dismissed as small consulting gigs. When Lintech secured its Series C funding and moved into a downtown office building, she told him she'd taken on more clients. Just don't work too hard, he'd say, kissing her goodbye. You don't need to prove anything. But she did work hard, relentlessly. Lintech grew from 50 employees to over 200. They expanded internationally. Mei took calls at odd hours, explaining them away as time differences with overseas clients. She contributed to their joint account regularly, enough to cover her share of expenses but not enough to raise questions. The rest of her income went into separate accounts, investments, and back into the company. She bought their house through a holding company, letting Gavin believe they had a generous mortgage that he primarily paid. The deception built up in layers, year after year, until it became a parallel life. There was Mei Reed, Gavin's wife, who did some consulting work from home and managed their social calendar. And there was Mei Lin, her legal name professionally, the driven CEO of Lintech Global, who now employed over 500 people across 3 continents. Why maintain the lie for so long? At first, it was to avoid disrupting Gavin's sense of himself. Then, it was because she feared his reaction, not just to the deception, but to her success eclipsing his. Later, it became a matter of momentum. The longer the deception continued, the harder it became to imagine revealing the truth. There were moments when she nearly told him. When Lintech won Industry Innovator of the Year. When they acquired their main competitor. When Forbes included her on their 40 under 40 list. But each time, something held her back. Perhaps it was the way Gavin casually referred to female CEOs as aggressive or difficult, or how he'd comment that successful women had to sacrifice too much. Or maybe it was how, after business dinners with his colleagues, he'd remark with satisfaction, Mitchell's wife is some big shot at an investment firm. She's never home. Their kids barely know her. The message was clear. He valued her availability, her supportive presence in his life. Would that change if he knew the truth? And so the years passed, their marriage settling into comfortable patterns built on a foundation of half-truths. Gavin's career plateaued, while Mei's soared behind a carefully constructed partition. She learned to silence her phone during dinner, to step away during family gatherings to take urgent calls, to explain away the occasional industry acquaintance who recognized her in public. Until yesterday, When everything began to unravel, the Henderson dinner had been Gavin's moment. A potential contract for his firm to design a new corporate headquarters. He'd been pursuing it for months, leveraging every connection. Mei had sat beside him, playing the role of supportive wife, while mentally reviewing the final points of the Beijing acquisition. When the check came and Gavin's card was declined, she saw the humiliation flash across his face. She'd offered her own card, but he'd waved it away, finding another that worked. In the car ride home, his silence had been ominous. "The joint account is empty," he'd finally said. "Did you withdraw money without telling me?" She hadn't. In fact, she'd deposited an extra $10,000 the previous week. But explaining that would raise too many questions. "I'll look into it," she'd promised. Maybe there was a mistake. But Gavin had already formed his conclusion. His financially naive wife had mismanaged their money again. It fit his narrative perfectly. Too perfectly to question. Now, as Mei packed an overnight bag in their bedroom, she wondered if she'd been protecting him all these years, or simply avoiding the harder truth, that she'd outgrown the space he'd allotted. Her in his life. She zipped the bag closed and called, "Jessica, I need you to move up the announcement," she said when her COO answered. "First thing tomorrow. And I'll be coming into the office." "You're never in the office for announcements," Jessica replied, surprise evident in her voice. "I am for this one," Mei said, looking around the bedroom she'd shared with a man who didn't truly know her. It's time for a change. The Lintech Global headquarters occupied the top 8 floors of a gleaming tower in the financial district. Mei had been involved in every aspect of its design, from the floor plan to the lighting systems, yet she rarely set foot in the building. Most of her work happened remotely, in video conferences, or in meeting spaces away from the main office. Today was different. She arrived at 7:30 a.m., entering through the private executive elevator that she'd used perhaps a dozen times in the 3 years since they'd moved to this location. The security guard did a double take. "Good morning, Ms. Lin," he said, recovering quickly. "We weren't expecting you." "Good morning, Harold," she replied, remembering his name from the security staff briefings. "It's a big day." The executive floor was already humming with activity. The Beijing acquisition had been in the works for 18 months, a delicate negotiation that would transform Lintech from a successful national player to a global powerhouse. "Jessica." Zhang looked up from her tablet as Mei entered, her expression shifting from focused intensity to surprise. "You're here," she said unnecessarily, rising from her chair. At 45, Jessica was the person Mei trusted most professionally, brilliant, loyal, and the only one who knew even fragments of Mei's complicated personal life. "I'm here," Mei confirmed, setting down her overnight bag. "And I'm staying." "Have the legal team arrived?" Jessica nodded, studying Mei's face. "Everything okay with the husband?" Mei's hesitation was answer enough. "I see," Jessica said. "Conference room is ready. Beijing team is on standby for the video call. PR has the press release drafted for your final approval. And the board? 6 are here in person, 2 joining virtually. Marcus called to say he's running 10 minutes late, traffic from the airport." Mei nodded, mentally shifting into the role she rarely embodied. Physically in this building, the founder and CEO who had built this company from nothing into a billion-dollar enterprise. "Let's finish what we started," she said. The next 90 minutes passed in a blur of signatures, legal confirmations, and final negotiations. At precisely 9 a.m., Mei stood before her assembled board members, executive team, and a large screen showing their new Beijing partners. "Today marks a historic moment for Lintech Global," she began, the words she'd rehearsed flowing naturally. "With this acquisition, we become the leading provider of predictive analytics solutions across North America and Asia. Our technologies will now serve over 40% of the global supply chain market." She continued outlining the strategic vision, watching as her Beijing counterpart nodded in agreement. When she finished, there was a round of applause, followed by a champagne toast, ceremonial at this early hour, but traditional for major deals. As glasses clinked and congratulations circulated, Mei felt her phone vibrate. "Gavin." She excused herself and stepped into her rarely used office, closing the door before answering. "Hello? Where are you?" Gavin's voice was tense. "I went to call Claire to check if you arrived safely, but she said you never contacted her." Claire. Her sister. Where she was supposedly staying. "I didn't go to Claire's," Mei said, gazing out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city sprawled below. From this height, she could actually see their house, a tiny point in the exclusive hillside neighborhood where Gavin believed they were stretching to afford their mortgage. "Then where the hell are you? And why is there a news article with your picture on it?" Mei's breath caught. "What article?" "Something about Lintech Global acquiring a Chinese company. There's a woman who looks exactly like you, identified as Mei Lin, CEO. What kind of coincidence is that?" The press release. It had gone out exactly as scheduled, accompanied by the corporate photo taken last year that she'd always kept off social media. "It's not a coincidence." "Gavin." A long silence followed. "I don't understand," he finally said, his voice strained. "Yes, you do?" Mei sat in the chair behind her desk, a desk chosen for her by the office designer, yet which she'd never actually worked at. "You're looking at a picture of me with my name and my title. This is some kind of mistake. Or a weird joke." His voice rose slightly. "Lintech is a major company. I've heard of them. You consult for small startups." "No, Gavin, I founded Lintech. I'm the CEO. I have been since before we met." Another silence, longer this time. "That's not possible," he finally said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "You would have told me, would I?" Mei asked softly. "When would have been the right time? When you told the Hendersons I was taking a break from work to focus on family? Or when you explained to your mother that my little business was just a hobby? Or maybe after you informed me that I don't understand the value of money and should leave our home? This doesn't make any sense." His voice had turned defensive. "If you're some hotshot CEO, why would you hide it? Why would you let me believe—" "That's what we need to talk about," Mei interrupted. "But not over the phone. I'll be at Westfield's at noon. We can talk there." Westfield's was an upscale restaurant downtown, walking distance from her office. Public enough to prevent a scene, private enough for a difficult conversation. "You want me to meet you for lunch? Now, after dropping this on me?" "Yes," she said simply. "Noon. Table will be under Lin." She ended the call before he could respond, then sat motionless, staring at the phone in her hand. 11 years of careful separation between her worlds had just collapsed in the span of a 3-minute call. A knock at the door broke her reverie. Jessica entered, her expression concerned. "Everything okay? The Reuters reporter is here for your statement." Mei took a deep breath and stood. "Everything is finally exactly as it should be," she said, straightening her jacket. "Let's not keep the press waiting." Westfields occupied the entire 42nd floor of a downtown tower, offering panoramic views of the city and the bay beyond. Mei arrived early, confirming the reservation and requesting a corner table that offered privacy without isolation. The maitre d' recognized her immediately. "Ms. Lin, an honor to have you join us today. Your table is ready whenever you are." She'd been coming here for business lunches for years. Gavin had never joined her. Seated at the table, water poured and bread basket delivered, Mei found herself obsessively checking the time. At 55, would he show up? Part of her wondered if he might refuse, might need more time to process. Another part suspected his curiosity would override his anger. At precisely noon, she saw him enter, scanning the restaurant. He'd changed from the morning, wearing one of his better suits, the charcoal gray he reserved for important client meetings. Armoring himself, the maître d' directed him to her table. As Gavin approached, Mei noticed the tightness around his mouth, the careful neutrality of his expression, his professional face, the one he used when navigating difficult situations. "Gavin," she said as he reached the table. He didn't sit immediately, looking down at her as if seeing a stranger. "Mei," he finally replied, taking his seat. "Or should I say Ms. Lin? Apparently, I don't know who my wife is." "I'm the same person I've always been," she said quietly. "You just didn't know all of me." A waiter approached, but Gavin waved him away with a curt gesture. 10 years, he said, leaning forward slightly. 10 years of marriage, and you've been what? Living a double life? Pretending to be someone you're not? I never pretended, Mei countered, keeping her voice even. I just didn't correct your assumptions. Assumptions? He laughed, the sound sharp and without humor. You actively misled me. All those consulting trips? The work calls at odd hours? The separate accounts that I thought were about maintaining some independence? They were about independence, she said. Mine. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? How it makes me feel? He ran a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture of frustration. My wife is apparently some tech mogul and I had no idea. People will think I'm either completely oblivious or what, Gavin? Or that I couldn't handle my wife's success, he finished, his voice dropping. That you had to hide it from me because I'm that insecure. Mei studied him, noting the flush of embarrassment beneath his anger. And is that true? She asked. Could you have handled it? Because from where I sit, every signal you ever gave me suggested otherwise. The waiter returned, and this time Mei ordered for both of them, their usual preferences at high-end restaurants. Gavin didn't object, watching her with a mixture of familiarity and newfound wariness. When they were alone again, he spoke more carefully. What signals? I've always supported your work. Have you? Mei took a sip of water. You've supported what you thought was my work, a small consulting business that didn't threaten your position. But every time I mentioned expansion or growth, you'd make some comment about work-life balance or women who prioritize career over family. That wasn't about you, he protested. That was about Mitchell's wife, or Craig's sister, or... It was always about me, Gavin. You just didn't know it. She leaned forward. Do you remember when we were dating and you introduced me to your mother? You told her I worked with computers but was not one of those career-obsessed types. He shifted uncomfortably. I was trying to make her like you. By diminishing me, Mei said. And it worked. She approved because I fit into her idea of a suitable wife. Supportive. Secondary, available. That's not fair, he said. But his protest lacked conviction. 2 years ago, Mei continued, when Lintech, my company, was featured in Business Weekly, you picked up the magazine, flipped through it, and commented that female CEOs probably had miserable personal lives. Do you remember what I said? Gavin frowned, clearly searching his memory. I said, maybe they're happy. And you laughed and said, nobody's happy working 80-hour weeks in a glass tower. That glass tower, Gavin, is 8 blocks from here. I designed it. I work there. And despite what you think, I am happy. Their meals arrived, providing a momentary reprieve from the intensity of the conversation. They both went through the motions of starting to eat, though neither had much appetite. So all this time, Gavin finally said, setting down his fork, when I thought we were building a life together, you were, what? Humoring me? Keeping your real life separate? I was trying to have both, Mei admitted. The company I built and the marriage I wanted. But to do that, I had to become smaller in our home than I was in the world. And our finances? His voice hardened. Was that all some elaborate game too? Making me think I was the primary provider when actually I paid off our mortgage 3 years ago. Mei finished for him. Yes, Gavin stared at her, shock evident on his face. The house is paid off? But the monthly payments go into an investment account in both our names, she said. It's grown quite well. I was planning to show it to you on our anniversary next month. Surprise? Funds for that boat you've always wanted. He set down his water glass with enough force that some liquid sloshed over the... So you've been what? Secretly managing me? Letting me believe I'm contributing equally while you're actually controlling everything behind the scenes? That's not... No, I think that's exactly right. He cut her off, voice rising slightly before he caught himself and continued more quietly. You've been playing some kind of twisted game, watching me struggle with client pitches and project budgets, all while you're sitting on what? Millions? It wasn't a game, Mei said firmly. It was a compromise I made with myself because I didn't think you could accept the full truth of who I am. And based on your reaction right now, I was right. My reaction? To finding out my entire marriage has been built on lies? Not lies, she corrected. Omissions. The person you married, the woman who loves art museums and hates cilantro, who reads historical fiction and can't stand horror movies, who held your hand through your father's illness and celebrates every small victory in your career, that woman is real. She's me. I just also happen to be someone who built $1 billion company. Gavin fell silent, processing her words. Around them, the restaurant continued its lunchtime rhythm, oblivious to the seismic shift occurring at their quiet corner table. I don't even know what to do with this, he finally said. How am I supposed to just adjust to finding out that my wife— He stopped abruptly as a new thought seemed to strike him. Wait, last night, when I told you to leave, was that why the card was declined? Were you making some kind of point? Mei shook her head. No, that was genuinely a bank error. I deposited money into our joint account last week. You can check the records. Then why didn't you just tell me? Why let me believe that I'm financially incompetent? Mei supplied. Because that's what you wanted to believe, Gavin. It fit your narrative about me, about us. The same narrative that made you comfortable telling me to leave our home because I needed to learn the value of money. She could see the moment her words hit home, the flash of recognition, quickly followed by defensiveness. So this is my fault? He asked. I'm supposed to apologize for not somehow magically knowing what you deliberately hid from me? No, Mei said, softening her tone. This isn't about fault. We both created this situation. I chose to hide parts of myself because I was afraid of losing you. And you chose to see me the way you needed to, even when there were signs that didn't fit. What signs? There were no signs that my wife was secretly running a major tech company. There were dozens, she countered. The international calls. The industry contacts who recognized me in public. The way I could discuss business strategy in detail whenever your work came up. Even my wardrobe. Do you think consultants for small startups typically own Chanel suits and Louboutin heels? Gavin looked momentarily lost, as if mentally reviewing years of overlooked clues. I didn't see because you didn't want me to see, he finally said. Maybe, Mei acknowledged. Or maybe you didn't see because it would have required rethinking who we are to each other. Who you are to yourself, he flinched slightly at that. Meaning? Meaning that for 10 years you've been the provider, the successful one, the one whose career set the terms of our life together. She held his gaze steadily. Would you have been comfortable if you'd known the truth? If you'd known that my net worth is over 100 times yours? That my annual income is— Stop. He held up a hand. Just stop. Mei fell silent, watching the play of emotions across his face. Anger, hurt, embarrassment, confusion. I need some time, he finally said. This is— a lot, she nodded. I understand. But Gavin, I won't be coming home tonight. Or tomorrow, he looked up sharply. You're leaving? Now? In the middle of this? You asked me to leave yesterday, she reminded him gently. You said I should go until I learned my lesson. Well, I've learned it. Not the one you intended, but an important one nonetheless. What lesson is that? He asked, his voice strained. That I can't be whole with someone who doesn't want to see all of me, she said simply. I've divided myself for 10 years and I can't do it anymore. So that's it? One fight, one misunderstanding, and you're throwing away a decade of marriage? No. A decade of half-truths has brought us here. What happens next is up to both of us. She reached into her bag and removed a business card, sliding it across the table to him. This has my direct office number and the address of where I'm staying. When you're ready to talk, really talk about who we are and what we want, call me. Mei stood, leaving cash for the bill, a gesture that suddenly felt symbolic in a way it never had before. I love you, Gavin, she said softly. I always have, but I need to know if you can love all of me, not just the parts that fit comfortably into your life. With that, she walked away, feeling both the crushing weight of a marriage in crisis and the strange, unexpected lightness of finally standing fully in her truth. 3 weeks passed. Mei settled into a temporary rhythm, living in the corporate apartment maintained for visiting executives, immersing herself in the office culture she'd only experienced remotely for years, working longer hours than usual to fill the silence of her evenings. Gavin didn't call. She'd seen the media coverage, of course. The Beijing acquisition had made business news across the country, with several profiles highlighting the secretive CEO who'd built Lintech into a powerhouse while maintaining an unusually low public profile. One particularly thorough reporter had even uncovered her marriage to prominent architectural engineer Gavin Reed, though mercifully, without details of their current separation. On her 4th Friday in the corporate apartment, Mei left work early, a rarity she justified by having been in the office for 14 consecutive days. She took a long shower, ordered dinner from her favorite Thai restaurant, and was just settling in with a glass of wine when her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? It's me," Gavin's voice. "Can we talk?" 20 minutes later, she sat in the lobby of her building, watching through the glass doors as Gavin's car pulled up. He emerged looking both familiar and somehow changed, slightly thinner perhaps, his posture less certain than she was accustomed to. "Thank you for meeting me," he said when he reached her, hands shoved awkwardly in his pockets. He seemed unsure whether to kiss her cheek, shake her hand, or simply stand apart. They ended up in an uncomfortable middle distance. "Would you like to come up?" she offered. "Or we could walk. There's a park nearby." "The park," he decided quickly. "I could use some air." They walked in silence for several minutes, following a path that wound between carefully tended gardens. The evening was cool but not cold, the sky holding the lingering light of early autumn. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Gavin finally said. "About us?" "About what you said." Mei nodded but didn't interrupt. "I was angry," he continued. "Hurt. Confused. I felt like I didn't know who I'd been living with for a decade." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that wasn't quite right. I did know you, the essential you. Your kindness. Your intelligence. The way you can solve any problem if you just have enough time to think about it." They reached a small footbridge over an ornamental pond. Gavin stopped, turning to face her directly for the first time. "What I didn't know was the scale of your accomplishments, and I've been asking myself why you felt you couldn't share that with me." "I told you why," Mei said softly. "You did," he acknowledged. "And at first I wanted to deny it, to believe you were being unfair. But then I started really looking at our life together, at the things I've said and done." He drew a deep breath. "You were right. I gave you signals, hell, more than signals. I practically announced that I couldn't handle a wife who outperformed me." The admission hung between them, more honest than anything that had been said at Westfield's. "I went back through our photo albums last week," he continued. "There's a picture from the Johnson wedding 4 years ago. You were on your phone in the corner, looking intense. I remember being irritated that you were working during a social event. Now I realize you were probably closing a major deal." "The European expansion?" Mei confirmed. "It was coming down to the wire," Gavin nodded. "You've been living this double life, making these enormous decisions, building something remarkable, all while I was complaining that you weren't focused enough on our dinner parties." "You didn't know," Mei said. "Because I didn't want to know," he corrected. "Because I liked believing I was the successful one, the provider. It made me feel—" He struggled for the word. "Necessary?" Mei suggested. "Yes." His voice dropped. "Necessary, important, the man you needed." They resumed walking, slower now. "I did some research on Lintech," Gavin said after a moment. "Read everything I could find. Watched videos of your rare public appearances. You're extraordinary, Mei. What you've built is incredible." "Thank you," she said simply. "And I've been asking myself, if you had told me the truth from the beginning, could I have handled it? Would I have been secure enough to be the husband of Mei Lin, tech visionary? Or would I have felt diminished, overshadowed, He stopped again, turning to face her. I'd like to think I would have risen to the occasion. That I would have been proud, supportive. But honestly, I don't know. The man I was then? He had some growing to do. And the man you are now? Mei asked quietly. Gavin looked out over the park, gathering his thoughts. The man I am now understands what he nearly lost through his own insecurity. He turned back to her. I can't promise I won't struggle with this adjustment. That there won't be moments when my ego gets bruised or my old assumptions resurface. But I can promise to try, to see you, all of you, and to be proud of who you are instead of threatened by it. Mei felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. That's all I ever wanted, just to be fully seen. I'd like a chance to do that, he said. To know the whole Mei, not just my wife, but the CEO, the founder, the businesswoman. To support your success instead of requiring you to hide it. It would mean changes, she warned. Public events you'd attend as my husband. People who would know you primarily in relation to me, not the other way around. I'm prepared for that, he said with surprising steadiness. In fact, I've already had a taste of it. The Henderson project? They called last week to confirm I got the contract. That's wonderful, Mei said genuinely. Congratulations. They mentioned they'd read about my wife's company acquiring a major Chinese competitor. Asked if I could get them an introduction to discuss their supply chain systems. His smile was rueful. Apparently being married to you is good for business. Is that why you're here? She asked, only half joking. For the networking opportunities? No. He reached for her hand, tentatively at first, then with more certainty when she didn't pull away. I'm here because I love you. Because I miss you. Because our home isn't home without you in it. Mei studied his face, the face she'd woken up beside for a decade. The face that had looked at her with love and frustration and desire and, yes, sometimes dismissal. She saw sincerity there now and humility and a willingness to change that gave her hope. I can't go back to how things were, she said. I won't make myself smaller again. I wouldn't want you to, Gavin replied, squeezing her hand. I want to know the woman who commands boardrooms and closes billion-dollar deals. I want to be proud of her openly. Not just of the parts of her that fit neatly into my preconceptions. Mei felt tears threaten, the first she'd allowed herself since this all began. I've missed you too, she admitted. Even while I've been angry with you, even while I've been uncertain about our future. Then let's build a new future, he suggested. One where we're both fully present. Where your success is our success. Where I'm secure enough to stand beside you rather than expecting you to stand behind me. I'd like that, Mei said softly. But it will take time. Trust to rebuild. Habits to change? I know. Gavin nodded. I'm not asking you to come home tonight. I'm asking if you're willing to try, to see if we can create something better than what we had before. Mei considered his words, weighing them against the pain of the past weeks, the deceptions of the past years, and the love that had somehow survived it all. Yes, she finally said. I'm willing to try. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. They began walking again, still hand in hand, moving slowly back toward her building. The city lights were coming on around them, office towers illuminated against the darkening sky. There's a Lintech event next Thursday, Mei said after a while. A reception for our major clients to discuss the Beijing integration. Would you come? As my husband? Gavin smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. I'd be honored, he said. But you'll have to tell me what to wear. I've never been the CEO's husband before. You'll figure it out, Mei said, returning his smile. You're smarter than you've been giving yourself credit for. As they reached her building, Gavin hesitated. Would it be all right if I called you tomorrow? Maybe we could have dinner? I'd like that, Mei said. But make it Sunday. I have calls with Beijing most of Saturday. Sunday it is, he agreed. Then leaned in to kiss her cheek, a tentative gesture, bridging the gap between their old life and whatever came next. Mei watched him walk back to his car, a complex mix of emotions swirling within her. There were no guarantees, she knew. The road ahead would have its challenges, its moments of regression and doubt. But for the first time in their marriage, they were both fully present, both fully seen. As she rode the elevator back to her apartment, Mei felt a sense of possibility unfurling. Not just for her marriage, but for herself, a self no longer divided, no longer diminished. Whatever came next, she would face it standing at her full height, in the full light of day.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.